I warmly welcome you to the German Pavilion here at COP29. We are your host now for the next session, Germanwatch, Bread for the World and the Rosa-Luxemburg Foundation. We are hosting a session where we would like to discuss with you the state of the art of loss and damage at these negotiations. It is the last day at this COP. Maybe. We probably will have an extension in negotiations, but it's the official end of the negotiations. So we would like to discuss with you where we are, what is still missing, and the final push that is urgently needed to come to a fair outcome, hopefully tonight. I also warmly welcome the people back home who are with us here on their notebooks or mobile phones and following us. We will also record it. You can also watch it later. So now I ask my distinguished guest to come here on the panel. So first, I warmly welcome Alpha Kaloga. He is the lead negotiator for loss and damage for the African Group of Negotiators and co-chair of the advisory board of the Santiago Network. Alpha, please have a seat here. Thanks for being with us. And now I would like to welcome Ms. Laingane Italeli, Talia. She is the Attorney General Government of Tuvalu. Please come on stage. I also know that you were part of the Raising Nations initiative. And please have a seat next to me. Warm welcome. Next, I would like to ask Vera Künzel, and it's a German pavilion. I'm glad that I'm the chair because I can pronounce her name rightly. Vera Künzel, she's a senior advisor, climate change adaptation and human rights with Germanwatch. Warm welcome. At last, but not least, the usual troublemaker, Tetet Lauron. She is an advisor for the United Nations program at the Rosa-Luxemburg office in New York. A warm welcome, please. And my name is Sabine Minninger, and I'm a senior policy advisor on climate change with the German development organization Bread for the World. Nice that you're all here. Thank you. Last day of the COP. That's a very exhausting moment. It's also the last day of the German Pavilion, and I heard we are not the last one here today. And really a big thank you already now that you're here. We promise you, we won't do this for 90 minutes because we know how exhausting it is to sit here. I mean, after now, what do we are day 11 now, right? 11, yeah. Okay, so we will make it as interactive as possible. So please use the time. Mitya is here. He will help us with the microphone, and we will have a lively discussion and come up with all your frustration. This is the place where you can articulate yourself. So I would like now to ask Vera to give an overview of the negotiations, like a big picture where we are with loss and damage right now. She came here with a PowerPoint presentation, and I'd like to ask now the IT, the technical support, to display Vera's PowerPoint presentation. Mr. Borstel. So, please, Vera, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much, Sabine, and welcome also from my side. Super nice to see so many of you here. We were quite worried to not have anyone here at the last day of negotiations, but I guess as you're waiting for the new texts to come, we're really happy to have you here. I will be very brief and just giving you a short overview of where we do stand now on loss and damage at the COP here. So we had different agenda items. One of them have been the fund or the report of the board for the fund for responding to loss and damage. We have seen a few additional pledges to the pledges that have already been made at last COP and in the time until now. We have seen at COP, we have at this COP 3 pledges from Sweden, Australia, and New Zealand, summing up to around 56 million US dollars, plus of course the additional pledges from COP 28. But from our perspective, that is of course so far away from the needs and so far away from what we need to fill this fund and make it a success, not only in establishing it, but really making it work and delivering on the promises. So yeah, that is where we stand in this regard. In terms of the negotiations, we have a decision on the report of the board, but we really want to highlight that there's a high risk without filling the fund of destroying the successes of the last 2 COPs, and of course failing on delivering to support the most vulnerable who are in the center, of course. Then, of course, very closely connected, we have the new collective quantified goal on climate finance. That is the main issue of this COP, this as so-called finance COP. From our perspective, it is super important, of course, to have loss and damage as one pillar of the Paris Agreement integrated into the new collective quantified goal, also in terms of having a reliable promise that the fund for loss and damage will be filled. In the last text version, we have loss and damage in, but of course, but not on equal footing as mitigation and adaptation. We really hope that this will change. Of course, also, most important, the quantum is not decided yet, and whatever it may be, from our perspective, it really needs to have like a ratcheting up mechanism, because we know the needs are increasing also in the future. And last but not least, on the NCQG, from our perspective, the polluter pays principle really needs to be in there. We need to make use of options to leverage additional public money. There are a lot of measures in the discussion that can be used for that, but we really need to make contributors pay and polluters pay, sorry. And last but not least, for this COP, we also discussed on the Warsaw International Mechanism, the most important, or the key body institution for loss and damage under the convention. We have a joint decision on the reports of the Santiago Network, or there is one agenda item on the Santiago Network for loss and damage, and the executive committee of the WIM, as well as the review of the WIM, where we try to assess how it is performing. There is a decision, but there's also further negotiations necessary at the next session in Bonn. One of the key challenges were, for example, the localization of the Secretariat of the Santiago Network, but also there was a very strong demand for a loss and damage gap report from many developing countries. And yeah, we will see how that will play out at the next session. And then I just want to briefly look also into where we do stand in terms of real impacts, because we're here at the negotiations, but what we are doing this for is for supporting the outside world, to put it that way. Just to remember, in 2024 we had another year of extremes, like also the last year has been. The July has been the hottest month ever recorded. We had extraordinary extreme weather events that hit countries worldwide, just all over the globe. There's no exception of any region. But yeah, there were, just to putting out one example, there was a tragic climax in Eastern African countries after heavy rains and floodings this September, where 500 people died. We had nearly 500,000 displaced, and that is what we are talking about. That is what that is the effectiveness that we want, or the people that we want support, or we need to support with what we're doing here inside of the negotiations. And we also know there are a lot of estimates on numbers, but in terms of looking into extreme weather events, the needs are really growing, and we already are at around 143 billion US dollar of costs caused by extreme weather events that are related to climate change. So this is the part of the cost that is related already. So that is, I think, super important to mention. And also that attribution to climate change in terms of extreme weather event is as clear as never. The IPCC mentions that climate change is already affecting many weather extremes in every region across the globe, as I already mentioned. And I want to quote I want to put out one quote of Friederike Otto, and she said that it is already on the same level of scientific confidence as the statement that human influence has warmed the climate. So there's just no doubt in this connection. And then just one last point, in our climate risk index at Germanwatch, we look into the economic losses of countries, fatalities and affected populations due to extreme weather events worldwide. And we see, of course, all of the countries are affected, but most existentially, and that is the main point, those in the global south. And we know that also countries are thrown back in their development after extreme weather events hit. And that is often forgotten, that it's not only a problem in that year when it happens, but it is for the following years a problem for the countries. People are displaced, and there's a lot of challenges that they are facing. And yeah, there will be a new edition of the index, and we're further looking into this connection. Now I would hand over back to Sabine, and looking forward to the inputs of the others. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Vera, for your presentation. Give us a clear overview, not only of the negotiations, but also matching on the realities that we have to deal with. And I heard it very often in Alpha, you heard it also very often, that industrialized countries asked developing countries to be realistic. Be realistic in your call for climate finance. So 1.3 is not realistic. But it is the real invoice that you have to pay for climate change, even though you haven't caused it. And I think we can. So, Alpha, what is your take on the negotiations? Maybe you are the co-chair of the advisory board of the Santiago network. Maybe you also would like to give an update on that, how that went. But I really would like to hear how you feel, how loss and damage is anchored now in a climate finance goal, if you are happy with the state of negotiations. And my first question is, how tired are you? And second, please answer and please give us your take on where we stand now.
Thank you for having me. Thank to Germanwatch, thank to Bread for the World, thank to Rosa-Luxemburg for the invitation. And I think at some point you don't feel the tireless. You just want to get out of the impasse, and that is what matters here. And I do believe that we are at the critical juncture, in terms of test whether this multilateral process will work. The number, for instance, the 143 in terms of extreme event is only one category of loss and damage that is covered. It can be very higher. And the fact is, whether there is climate finance or not, someone is paying. And often there are vulnerable people who are paying because they have to save their people. So having said that, I think the negotiation is being very unusual this time around. For the first time, I thought we had the last couple of years a momentum on loss and damage, but we failed as a negotiator to have decision on the WIM review, which was very important to us, as well as the joint report EXCOM and Santiago Network. WIM review, we were clear in terms of demand. We wanted to have a global status of loss and damage, to fit into the GST, to have an evidence-based and scientific input into the GST. We wanted to have voluntary guidelines for countries that wish to do so, to include loss and damage in their indices. We wanted to talk about finance. We wanted to talk about more tailored knowledge product that can be in light of the implementation stage that we have reached in terms of loss and damage. So, and there were, of course, the report of the EXCOM and the Santiago Network. So we felt we applied Rule 16. I think it is a collective failure. And I guess at the last days we were saying, because of time constraint, that we feel that it's better to have no deal than to have a bad deal. So the momentum, we need to rush it up also in terms of institutional arrangement, in terms of institutional growing. So having said that, on Santiago Network, I'd like to say that the Santiago Network has been established to catalyze technical assistance to developing countries, and it's very important in terms of connection to the form for responding loss and damage. And that's one of the challenges that we need to fix in terms of coherence, coordination, and ensuring that the system works as a mechanism. Each part plays its due role to ensure that the process of accessing to resources is science-based, it's rapid, and the level of responsiveness is commensurate to the extent or to the gravity of climate impact. Having said that, I think on loss and on NCQG, that was also one of the plea of the Africa Group. We've been saying that now we have an article under the Paris Agreement on loss and damage. Loss and damage, given the bad news we are getting every year, needs to be a third pillar of a convention, along with adaptation, mitigation. And what we are seeing in NCQG is a sign that loss and damage is still not being perceived as a big problem. And I do believe and remains optimistic that the final version will have it. So I will stop here to keep the time, and happy to come back again.
Thank you so much. And you have to say what you have to say, and here you can do it. That's why we have invited you. Seriously, we want to hear the opinion of the African group. We want to hear also the opinion of the least developed countries. And of course, we would also like to hear the opinion of the German government. They apologize that they were unable to be on a panel now, but they always gave us a lot of moments that we can have bilaterals, and they offered this also to us. So, and I also would like to hear the opinion of the perspective of small island development states. Laingane, you are coming from Tuvalu. You are the Attorney General of the government of Tuvalu. Your husband is the Minister for Climate Change and Home Affairs, Mina Talia. You both are like a true power couple fighting for the rights of your small island nation and big ocean nation. I think we should not forget to mention this as well. So you are here now also from the beginning fighting for the rights of Tuvalu. So what is your take on how the negotiations are moving forward and what is important for Tuvalu?
Thank you, first of all, Sabine, for that nice introduction. Thank you for your kind words. Before I begin to ponder or pour out my frustrations on the progress of the negotiations so far, I can tell you it's not easy to be the Attorney General of Tuvalu and being the wife of a minister at the same time. And it's tripling and it's doubling the hassle being here at COP with how slow things have been. So that's another added burden to myself. And I believe that you all share the same sentiments. Now, Sabine, I'm not a finance expert, and I'll actually look into the question that you've posed from a legal perspective, more from a human rights-based perspective. I read the ECHO newsletter yesterday, and it reiterated, it emphasized the importance of a human rights-based approach in terms of all of this. This is very important because you've mentioned earlier that the quantum, we need, the developed countries are asking us, you need to be realistic with your asks in terms of the dollar sign. Of course, yes, we are realistic. We have the science behind it to back up what we're asking for. We have the data, and if we are given the proportionate amount, that is human rights-based. So a human rights-based approach is very important in all of this. This should be the center of this. We have to be given, we have to be provided with the adequate, the sufficient, and the efficient finance that we do need, given our special circumstances as SIDS, as LDCs. And so I took a look at I read through the NCQG text. It's a very long text. Even coming from having a legal background and having to read all these flowery words, I'm like, come on, we need to do more. Enough of talking. We need to do more and we need to deliver on this. And loss and damage has been on the agenda for ages. And I can't believe at this time in 2024, COP29, we're still grappling We're still trying to find our way out to be given the adequate finance that we need. And so it's quite frustrating and it's quite disappointing. One thing that lacks is the proper language in the text. And that is very important from a legal perspective as well. It's because countries do not see the proper language that they think, especially developed countries, that they think and that they believe suits their circumstances. They tend to forget about what is the right language that is needed from a developing country perspective. And I think that's very important. And whatever the quantum is, please, we do need a realistic one. Yes, we are being realistic. And so it's my humble call to developed countries. They need to be realistic as well. It's not just us. And I know polluter pays principle, they don't like it because we contribute almost next to nothing. And they are the main contributors. You know, I'm saying this because it's a fact, and it has been proven by science. We have the facts and the science to back up and the data. I think I'll stop there because I'm getting more frustrated as I go on and on. Thank you, Sabine.
The applause is for you. This is your applause, and thank you very much for that sharp and strong message. I mean, it is. We are now in a dirty end game. If not now, when would be the right moment to articulate our frustration and the needs? Thank you very much, and I'm sure that there will be many questions now and comments coming back to you. Nevertheless, I would also like to give the TED a civil society perspective from the Global South, from the people, what is needed here. First of all, how are you, my dear? How tired are you? How frustrated are you? And how motivated are you to fight this through until the end? Please.
Thanks, Sabine, and good morning to all of you. How am I? Same la, you know? As we say in my region, same la. It's been my 15th COP. I'm almost embarrassed to say that I've been in every single COP and maybe throw in a few SB sessions in between since Copenhagen. I'm sure some of you here have been to more COPs than I have. We're the same, no? 15 COPs. But ultimately, it's about power, politics, and political will. Yeah? I don't know if it's an indication of how bad a COP will go down, that it always seems to be developing countries in competition with each other on who is more vulnerable. And it's a shame. We should be ashamed to be pitting developing countries against each other on who ranks higher in terms of vulnerability, because all of us would have our own stories and evidence of vulnerabilities. This is not a very good mic. All right, so...
Your finger is down at the remote.
Okay. So before coming to COP, the Philippines has been battered by 6 typhoons in 1 month. 4 of them happening one after the other. And 2 of them not just in the typhoon category, but super typhoon category. So you can just imagine our worries and concerns for family and friends back home as we come here. So we have high hopes, as always. We can't afford to have an unambitious COP delivering an equally unambitious finance outcome. There's so much hype around this being a finance COP. There's so much hype about countries coming together in the spirit of solidarity. But what are we seeing here? No, a lot of bullying, a lot of dirty tactics, a lot of misinformation. Bullying, saying that you have to take it or leave it. And you know who I'm talking about. Dirty tactics and misinformation saying that, developing countries are not united. Each one is just looking after their own interest. That's not true, and we can't have that. that is not acceptable. It's not an acceptable outcome for us. So when we read the text this morning saying that quantum is still X in brackets, come on. We're only a few hours away until the curtain falls on this COP. So it's becoming more and more likely that, no deal is better than a bad deal. Because if we have a bad deal, then it will be harder for us to reopen this conversation that has been dragging along not just for 3 years with so many TEDs, with so many workshops, but for the last 30 years, as what our friends from developing the SIDS are saying. This is not just a conversation that has happened and failed in the last 2 weeks. We have been failing, or no, not us. This process has been failing us for the last 30 years. So perhaps some of my key messages would be, we want complementarity and coherence. We can all say those nice things. But if we can't even have a decent number, it's X in brackets, no? Until now. Next week, we're going to be in Manila, welcoming all of you to the B4, another acronym, the 4th board meeting of the fund for responding to loss and damage. What conversations are we going to have if we have an X quantum here? And of course, if we have an X quantum that is in brackets and not agreed upon, it's like a house built on sticks. We have the architecture in the fund. We have the architecture in the Santiago network. But if there is no money, then we're just like, who's kidding who here? Now, let's not fool ourselves. As long as we do not have those monies actually coming in and flowing, we can have conversations ad infinitum about architecture, about complementarity and coherence. But if there's no number, there's no pledge, and more importantly, there's no actual contribution coming in, then this is all just a talk show. A glorified talk show that has been happening for the last 30 years. So I guess for us in civil society, we'll be here. We call ourselves the bitter enders because we are here until the bitter end, because we're not giving up on this fight to come out from this COP with higher ambition, with transformative actions, with climate justice. Thank you very much.
Wow, not much more to add, no? But first of all, is there something you would like to respond now, or shall we open immediately the panel? If you feel you would like to, please then do that.
Yes. Thank you for allowing me not to be political correct. And I think without badge, no one will tell my name. But nonetheless, this is the bitter reality. So, couple of things. The 1.3 trillions we are talking about was initiated by the Africa Group. 3 years ago, people were saying we are utopic. The 1.3 trillion is also now caught by developed countries. But the fact is, and I'm going to bring numbers, the fact is, the second review of the second determination needs report, determination of needs of developing countries, talking about 5 to 7 million trillions needed for climate change, bearing in mind that those are based on actions that are in the NDCs. More than 40% of the actions in the NDCs are not cost, so it might be higher. That's the first point. The second point is, the second report on the 100 billion goal said that for each dollar provided, it mobilized $0.35 in terms of private sector. The narrative about private sector being the solution is not working. The third point is the global investment narrative that is being brought. From my perspective, what does that mean? You will have a high number, but this high number reflects the mobilization and the investment in the north. because the private sector mobilized 0.3. So having said that, I think from Africa perspective, we have made studies and found out 20% of African countries are paying for servicing debt, then they have resources to invest for school, for health sectors. And yet they are vulnerable and impacted by climate change. The second point is there is no, let me say in other words, there is no objective climate finance architecture. I give you an example. I will not name anyone, but Africa has 1.5 billion citizens and a debt of 1.9 trillion. There is a country, 18 million, and having a debt of 2.9 trillions. Of course, if you talk in terms of macroeconomics, there are other factors that you said. But to explain to a normal people, can you explain how the 80 million with a high number of debt can be, rated higher in terms of solvency than the African, bearing in mind that 40% of the population are either retired or not able to work, and at the same time you have 60% of Africans who have not started working or are labor force. The architecture, in my point of view, as someone was telling to me, I'm quoting someone, he says, is a supranational organized crime. Why? Why? Because the point is, the system, even in the development field, you find UN organizations coming to our countries, getting money from different funds to generate information, and those information are not owned by us. Those information, you get a report, but the data are owned by them. And then we cannot steer and own our development process. So it is much more than the NCQG. It is about a fairness. We know that the North cannot solve our problem. We are ready to take our problem in our hand, but in a fair basis. So first, the financial architecture from Bretton Woods of the independence of the 70s needs to be reviewed. Second, we need to understand that domestic resource mobilization is not climate finance, it is our mobilization. And if the private sectors in Africa, for instance, in Guinea, because we put enabling environment, the attribution, if it comes to the tracking of that attribute to someone, it is our money, it's not coming from the North. The third point is the private sector needs regulatory framework in the North. The North needs to send signal to their private sectors saying, I give you guarantee, go there, make sure that you behave and you don't make any loss. Otherwise, they're not coming. Private sectors are rational beings. They only operate where they know the laws and where they are feeling comfortable that the shareholder will not fire them. So what is happening here, X doesn't matter. That's what Africa Group is saying. X is a distraction, X in terms of number. We want to know, for instance, how much 3 terawatt in terms of energy cost, and then we work on outputs, on result, not on the number, because the number, with a changing in the currency, with a crisis happening, will not mean anything. If you do that, you make the conversion. So what I'm trying to say, as we move on, the COP presidency and what is happening here, people have to know we are in 2024. And my generation, most of my generation, have studied the North. We know what is possible there. And we are very proud to be in the same sitting, knowing what is happening. So my generation is not ready to make a bad deal. We are not going to subscribe to any bad deal. Because if you have a global investment goal, for instance, you will subscribe to conditionality, how you manage your own country, how you operate your manual. It's better for me to go with my finance people to go to MDBs and negotiate. And I can negotiate in a better fare instead of being a framework that is constraining you to do certain things. I don't want to be politically incorrect, but the point is what I'm trying to say. It is all about our own future. It's about the children in the North. It is all about the transformation we want to do. The narrative that is entertained will be a collapse of the North. So if a politician in the North is saying, we are ready to do, provided the order does, what does bring? If you are ready to do, the population will ask you, does the order did something? That's the point. So I'm not going to engage in these contributor-based issues because the contributor base is something that we are calling for, but that's our own business. Contributor base is not in the Paris Agreement. It's not in the Paris Agreement. But loss and damage is in the Paris Agreement. So on the one hand, you want to say loss and damage is not part of NCQG because it is not part of a framework, but you bring new narrative saying contributor base that is not in Paris Agreement. So I let everyone to decide and judge for himself. Thanks.
Thank you, Alpha. So, if you just got in and have no clue what this is about, it is about climate justice. It is about the survival of the poorest, of the least developed countries, of the African countries, of small island states, the poorest and also the most vulnerable countries in the climate crisis and their fight for survival. Short take on that. And I would like now to open the panel and come in with comments, come in with questions and remarks, especially on loss and damage. Please, Mitya, there's a question there in the back. Can you please say your name and organization or country, whatever you are representing?
Thank you. My name is Amin Khan. I'm from Kenya. I'm with the Kenya Climate Change Working Group, a civil society organization, NGO. As I was walking past, I heard her talk about Kenya and mention about the drought and the flooding and what's happening. And she's absolutely right. In fact, I remember going to one place in Kajiado where the cow was sitting because it was drought and it couldn't even get up. And we had to help to get up the cow. And how the owner, a woman, was really suffering because there was no loss and damage amount for her. And this is happening very often in the Kenyan context. And the floods, which kill so many people all the time, just because there are not enough bridges or the bridges are washed away. And this is happening everywhere in Africa. But I think, I hope Germany cares. I was going to put you as part of the West, but I guess just for the initial part, I can say you're not part of it. But even when you talked about debt, you're absolutely right. Just to give an example in the Kenyan context, our 2.4 trillion shillings is our collection from tax, and 1.1 trillion goes towards debt. 900 billion towards wages. So there's only about 400 billion or so left to be able to deal with development. So without this loss and damage funds, I don't see any place in Africa to be able to prosper. And whilst I've not been there for 30 COPs, I've been there for the last 4, I can see with the way in which you're emotional about what's happening. Because every time we come, we talk about it and we go back. And last year in Dubai, we said, yes, there would be the loss and damage funds. And then when I look at the access to it, it's not there. We are told the World Bank or the African Development Bank will do it. And yet when you see FLOCA funds or whatever is coming through, it's a very small amount, which is not really helping anybody in any way. And I'm just trying to think that what is the root cause? Is it because Africa, there's no trust in the way the money is going to be dispersed? It's a question I need to ask, because why do we have to go then to the World Bank and to the African Development Bank? Is it that the African governments are not, or there's a challenge to be able to give it directly? Can we find a mechanism in which it can go direct to the grassroots level? Because what is happening is that without the loss and damage funds, it is really affecting the people in the ground, whether they're Gen Zs or the older people, care for the elderly, whoever they are. And yet, we can sit here and talk as a conference of parties, And we don't seem to really get any headway, because what is the root cause? Is it the amount? Or is it that we don't want or find a way how we can access the money from the West, now I can put Germany in, to make sure that even the West works together collectively to say, yes, we're going to do the funding. And I think that is where there's lack of trust. And I just do hope that we will come out with a solution. We still have one day today. And they still hope. Like in Dubai, we managed to make sure that the fuel aspect of fossil fuels was to stop. And today, let's just hope the president and the others will be able to work forward. And I still have hope. I still have hope. But I just want all of you to know that without this funding in Africa, we are doomed. Because only 4% of the emissions, the greenhouse emissions, is taking place from Africa. So how is it fair that Africa should not get funding from the rest of the world, the industrialized world and the West, for problems that we are facing, probably more so than what is happening in the other countries? And that's my take. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your intervention. I encourage others to get engaged. Ask what you want. Get rid of your frustration. It's fine. This is the self-help group on loss and damage. Please, there is a hand over there. Therapeutic self-help group.
Hello, thank you for allowing me to ask a question. My name is Chris Pulura. I'm from an NGO called the Blockchain and Climate Institute. We're an emerging technology research for climate action. And the gentleman talked about trust, and potentially, are there issues around evidencing the loss and damage that's occurred and try to bringing in the evidence of how it occurred, in which case you can evidence in a better way the true cause of the loss, and therefore the funding that should come and where it should come from in order to address those losses. In which case, could technologies such as artificial intelligence and data analysis help in the evidencing of the loss, such that could help then the funding claims?
Another intervention, comment, question? Yes, please, Mitya, behind you.
Yeah, my name is Abdul Fattah Muhammad, and I'm from Somalia, actually, Plasma University. And I'm wondering that some of you are talking about the fund and how we are going to access. Maybe some of you don't know that in Somalia, accessing fund, it takes a long way. Well, some of our students are dropping the school because they cannot pay their school fee because of the drought that is killing their livestock. So my question is that, is there any international organization like either Bright Germany or something that is working in Somalia to help people at least even to know before the disaster occur? Like some people even don't know when it's going to be flooded, when it's going to be a drought. So it's all we are talking about only information and technical, where people can have the knowledge and at least they can find a means to look for a fund for either for loss and damage. That's my question.
Please.
Hello, thank you to all the speakers and the organizers of this event. This was extremely helpful, and it's also very humbling to learn from your experiences. My name is Sarah. I'm the German youth delegate, but I'm speaking as an independent youth who is trying to change the narrative around loss and damage being something charitable, loss and damage being something voluntary that countries can pay if they want to. How can we manage that we get civil society on board that loss and damage is climate debt instead of climate charity?
Do I see more? Please in the back. Lina.
Thank you so much. I'm Lina Adil from Germanwatch, and thank you all for sharing very openly and also giving us a reality check of what's at stake. My question is more on coordination, complementarity, because now loss and damage is being framed as the brother or sister of adaptation, and adaptation is already suffering in terms of finance. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on this package that is being negotiated, where loss and damage is even pushed even further to the periphery and the adaptation.
Here in the front. Yeah, please introduce yourself.
Hi, Andrew Fuse from Church World Service, part of the ACT Alliance Ecumenical Delegation. Maybe a question, a flip side on the question about data and evidence, whether part of the challenge is that the evidence the communities have been bringing forward for 30 years now is not being adequately recognized as evidence or treated as evidence by institutions, including by the parties who are making these decisions, particularly if it's being brought forward in forms of local knowledge, indigenous knowledge, where people are documenting through the means that they have. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, sometimes I feel like rich countries are waiting that a cyclone will leave a postcard that says like, hi, it was me, climate change, sent the bill to Australia. So in this kind of attribution will never happen. So that's not realistic. But there is science and evidence, and it's very clear that there is climate-related loss and damage happening. It's first of all humanitarian aid organizations who came up with the numbers first, and now we have a very clearer picture, as Vera already outlined by the scientist Federico Otto, and the attribution science that became like more crystal clear. But still, I agree, it's all scientific evidence that we can get is more helpful to push negotiations. But first of all, we need the acknowledgement of taking over responsibility and a political will. And always pointing at it's not enough science for me to understand that I'm responsible. Well, if you caused a car crash, your insurance will tell you very clearly, and also the lawyer of the person that you have actually damaged, that you have to pay for it. And then you cannot say like, I wait for the science to come. So, and this is what we are experiencing here. I would like now to give my panelists the possibility to answer or pick up some of the questions that you would like to answer, and also make it maybe as a final round of answer as well. Vera, would you like to start?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for all of your great questions and comments. It's really helpful to also get like comments from people from countries that are affected, like the person from Kenya just elaborating on what happened in the country. And I wanted to mention one thing that he mentioned, that it is super important to have communities and people on the local level being able to access funding, and that is also something that the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage should do, and it is designed in a way, and it should be operationalized as far as possible, that and be able to really pay out, have a direct access payout modalities to ensure communities can directly get funding. And then on the evidence, of course, there is also a rapid attribution of specific events. There's the World Weather Attribution Project, and they are doing just that. They are looking into how much, how big is the percentage that is related to climate change. And they found that, or not only them, but there is scientific evidence that intensity and frequency is fueled by climate change of extreme weather events. And of course, it's not all of them are not caused by climate change, but there's a percentage, and that is really clear. And it is as clear as that climate change is human-made. So I think that is not the problem. We have a lot of evidence. And then I just wanted to say something on the difficulties to have enough data. There are a lot of data gaps, and that is a big problem. But what we found also in the work on the climate risk index, that it's either the other way around. There is really a lack of data, and if we would have better data, we would see the pictures even more severe. It is even the countries that have bad or not a good data coverage are even more affected, or we would see their effectiveness even clearer if the data would be better. So yeah, scientific evidence, I think, is not the problem here. It is about responsibility.
Yes, I will start by saying that in the process of designing the loss and damage fund, the first acts by developing country were a very humble 100 billion for the loss and damage fund. What we got is 0.7% of the 100 billion, and we are very grateful for additional resources like it was, but it is still a drop in the ocean. The second point is, in my point of view, is how the fund for responding to loss and damage can raise to the challenge of loss and damage. So the first question is, obviously, it has to be innovative. And if you look the text of the governing instrument of a loss and damage fund for responding loss and damage is there is a notion of rapid response. So hopefully we will operationalize that in such a way that is affordable and is doable and actually really rapid. The second point is the issue of access. If you look at the rapid response, obviously it has to be given to the government to have fiscal space and act as the climate shock occurs. You have system. The World Bank has policy instrument giving budget injection to countries. So why are we not using that? Why are we going to design a new system, a new framework of accessing? So we need to be practical, and I think that will be very important to ensure that if extreme event happen, the most important time is the first 2-3 days. So if a support comes later, it is actually managing the collateral damages, but the damage itself has incidents. The second point that I wanted to say is we need to have a mechanism that works together. Of course, the Fund for Responding Loss and Damage is an operating entity of a financial mechanism, but it is being set up to help the Washoe International mechanism. So a division of labor is very important. Who talks about access modalities, talks about preparation of the countries. So we need to figure out how this fund can work, for instance, with the Santiago network, noting that the Santiago network, we had to decide, we had to approve two budgets this year. One budget which is based on what is in account, and the second subject to conversion of the pledges. So the question is, often you hear pledges being made, but there is a long way from the pledges to the actual amount in the account. The third point that I wanted to say on loss and damage is that we need to have a programmatic approach. In Africa, for instance, that's very important, particularly when you talk about drought. Drought is a slow onset event, but with increasing pace, but long lasting. If you are having drought somewhere, it is a question of 10 years. So you cannot address that with a project. You need to have a program, a multi-year programs that actually addresses the problem at its core. So how the loss and damage, how country can, in light of the absence of data, be prepared to propose a substantial project that can give the fund the sense that it will result in something concrete. Last but not least, I think I will stop with a positive note. I do believe, and I stand guard to my mental mind not to allow any negative to come in. So I do believe it is now time that everybody hear that the whole narrative about we need to be ambitious, the communication fight that is happening, presenting mitigation as the most important things. Of course, that is the first ask for Africa, but we cannot subscribe to a mitigation program if there is no finance, no means of implementation. So that's the point. We need to have a narrative that is true to the reality. You cannot continue saying mitigation, and not taking into account that the lack of your mitigation has caused problem. If you look at the whole discussion on mitigation, there was a program, to the pre-2020 mitigation gaps never end up to something substantial. We still have a process now where we are all making actions, but those actions only works if the conditional INDCs are funded. And last but not least, I guess the number will come. It has to come this year. Next year, no one knows what is going to happen. And I like the idea of ratcheting up. And this ratcheting up only happen if it is informed by numbers. So we need to have annual reporting and continue understanding what needs to be done to ratchet it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Alpha. Actually, with everything you said now, I really didn't get the positive note out of this process that you announced at the beginning. Just a lot of homework to do, now, far away from climate justice with a growing risk gap in front of us. And Laingane, I visited your country, Tuvalu, twice. It is a South Pacific island dream. It is paradise, seriously. But the moment the sky turns gray, it was the most scary moment I have experienced. Your entire island is 1 meter above sea level rise. There is no place to hide, and you are seriously threatened. And then you get like this process that is really the top of ignorance in relation to the risk that your island is facing. So please, the next minutes are yours.
Thank you, Sabina. I can say for a fact, and as a woman, a young woman who grew up in Tuvalu, born and raised in Tuvalu, you saying that Tuvalu is paradise. It will no longer be paradise if we are not given the adequate finance that we need in terms of the impacts, trying to mitigate, trying to adapt to the adverse impacts of climate change, to the devastating impacts of climate change. We live the impacts of climate change on a daily basis. That's our reality back home. And I don't know what more we can say to actually get the message out there. Now, the evidence. I think we've provided more than enough evidence. The science is there, the IPCC, and I do appreciate the references made to the IPCC 6th Assessment Report in the NCKG text, but we need to do more, and we need to deliver on these flowery words that we're putting into the texts. You know, we can't be turning a blind eye on all of this. We're like little kids who come here, we're given all these long texts. Oh, we have it in here, the language is here. We have a compromise language here that could suffice your need, suffice the proper language that you're calling out for. No, we need action. We need to deliver on this. And in terms of access to finance, the quantum is still an X in brackets in the text. For one, we still have to determine the adequate amount. 2, accessibility. How are we going to access this? Will it be loans? Will it be grants-based? And that's why I'm saying we want a grants-based approach, because that is human rights-based approach. We are given what we need and what we deserve. And I believe that will be my final message to us all, to keep fighting. We still have a couple of hours, and we're looking forward to, if not a positive, not something that we can, we really want to see, but at least something that we live with, that we can live with. That is very important. Thank you, Sabine.
Thank you. Thank you. Keep on fighting is certainly not something that you have to urge Tetet to do, because she's doing it anyway. Yeah, a lot of frustration, Tetet, I know. But we will move on, and we will continue, and we will not let the responsible emitters off hook. So what is your final message?
two main messages that I would like for everyone to remember. Number one, the money is out there, but it's not going in the right places. It's not going where it's needed. Instead of money going to finance the fossil fuel industry, instead of money going to finance wars of aggression, we need those public monies to go and support those communities that are already struggling. Second message, we don't want to call developed countries the rich countries, because you actually owe us. You know, you became rich because you colonized us, because you extracted from us, because you oppressed our people. So look hard. Who is really developing who here? So we are here not to ask for charity, but we are here to collect on your climate, historical, ecological debt. Yeah? Third message, $100 billion has been met. No way. You have double, triple counted on that money for humanitarian, for development assistance. So even with that $100 billion that has just been arbitrarily pulled out from thin air in Copenhagen during our first COP, you still owe us the arrears to that $100 billion. So those messages, we need to really step up in these final hours of COP. Because we need for rich countries who owe us a climate debt to pay up. And it's not just peanuts, not crumbs that are falling off the table, but real money that we need and we deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you also to the audience back home and also here with us at COP29 in Baku. There's a lot of frustration, but there's also a lot of hope, support, solidarity, love among us that we will carry on. We will not give up because we have no choice. We sacrifice, all of us, we sacrifice a lot. We leave our families, our children back home to be here, to continue this. We are not alone in this, and that is actually very encouraging. And I think also every industrialized country has understood if they walk out here with a no deal, because a bad deal is a no deal, that would be such a lack of credibility of this process, of their own politics back home, and that will raise even more question marks. Why are you forcing us to come here and then you don't deliver? While we have to be here, we have no choice. So we hope, therefore, we will have a good outcome. It won't be a perfect one, but I really hope it will be a good outcome with a clear signal that the most vulnerable, that the poorest countries, the African countries, basically all developing countries who are facing extreme weather events and also slow onset events, have a hope to have a future in dignity. Thank you very much. We will finish a bit earlier so that we can also have like a very informal chat with all of you. Thank you.
Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP29 in Baku. Germany. Climate solutions, fast and fair.